Hey there, friend, and welcome back for another episode of the Your Hair Mentor podcast, where I'm your host and your hair mentor, Crystal Green. And I invite you to come take a listen to the top leaders and thinkers and experts and innovators in the beauty industry as they share their stories of triumph and struggles and success in creating their businesses behind the chair. I hope you enjoy these episodes just as much as I did recording them. See you on the inside, friends.
I have to tell you, you look so different with your hair down. I don't know if people tell you that. I feel like the same when I wear my hair up versus down. But when I first met you, you had your hair up in that like beautiful kind of round updo.
Yeah.
And you look so different with your hair down. I was like, oh, is
Yeah.
that the same person? Yes, it
Everybody,
is.
everybody always says that. They're like, something's off, something's different. And I'm like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's probably the last time I had my hair up. Yeah.
Yeah, which was a great look for being on stage and it keeps it out of your face too. But okay, so why don't we just jump in and have you give me like a little intro, like where are you? Who are
Yeah.
you? What you doing?
Okay, cool. Well, my name is Breanna Bell. I am located in Lawrence, Kansas, in the center of the US. It's funny because there's been a handful of people who actually have asked me, like, where is Kansas? And I'm like, I promise you, we exist. Like,
Aw.
we just get flown over and nobody acknowledges us. But yeah, I'm out here. I'm alive. There's hairstylists out here, girl specialists in this world. I have been in the industry for, I'm working on my 6th year right now, so I'm really excited. There's 6 years professionally. I've had a passion ever since I was super young for being in the hair industry. Thought it was going to be a hobby when I was younger. And then very quickly, just the more I got immersed in it and just connected with people, I was like, oh my goodness, like, why do I keep running away from this? Which I'm sure a lot of us have that story where it's like, it's kind of this notion of, is hair really a career? And we slightly buy into that, or maybe have some like, doubt or talk from others. And then you realize like you're really talented in this area and you love connecting with people. And I just saw that for myself. And specifically in when it comes to the hair industry, I work with a lot of tight textured hair, tight curly hair. I work with all hair types, but that specifically has become like the heart of everything I do and where I teach. Because there has always, for a long time just been just like a need for it. There's so many clients in this world that have curly hair and there's no knowledge, there's no product knowledge, technical knowledge, like everything from the beginning of entering into this industry to being years into the game and like still trying to seek out continued education. It's always just been limited. So that has been something that over the years I've become so passionate about, is just making hair education and hair resources more acceptable. I've worked behind the chair doing it and trying to, teach clients, and then being able to share the knowledge with other professionals is always amazing because everybody in this world has hair. So
Yeah.
there's no reason for people to try to keep all the information to themselves. Otherwise you're just gonna have that continuous problem of, okay, I'm overbooked, and someone else is either messing up on this and they want to know the information, or they're messing up on their clients just because they've never been told how to do it correctly. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That's
a little bit
awesome.
about me. I've been like chasing it for some years now, and it just feels good. All the different people and stylists I get to meet from other areas and stuff like that. So
hmm Well, statistically, since you've gotten past the first 5 years in the industry, like you're doing great. Most people that get in that first 1 to 5 years, if they don't find their niche and like what inspires them, they tend to walk away from it thinking, oh, maybe it's not for me. So the fact that you're there and like have found something that truly calls to you is amazing.
thank you. Thank you. I've heard that, before, and I remember being in school and someone telling me that, and also saying like the whole look to your left, look to your right, only one of you or a couple of you are gonna make it. And I was like, that is so like discouraging. Why would you say that? But I do realize like there's a lot that we have to deal with in this industry, and you do need to like find your niche, find your thing that's going to keep you going. And so I feel really blessed. Sometimes I like sit back and I'm like, how did I end up here? But I'm very thankful, and I just give all credit to God, because like couldn't have done it, without his guidance. So
Yeah.
this feels good. But thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. Did you know going into the industry, like when you went into beauty school, were you going to focus on like tight textured hair? Was that like your laser focus, or were you just like, I'm just going to do this thing and see what calls to me?
I would say that I was more so open-minded to exploring, and seeing what my thing ended up being. But a little backstory about me, I ended up maybe at the age of 12 hopping on YouTube. And so it's kind of funny. I love telling this story because I consider myself like, I tell younger generation, I was like, oh, I was an influencer before, influencing was a thing. Um, but it's funny because I was trying to learn how to do my own hair. And a little bit like a side note about me, I'm one of 11 children. So my parents had 11 children, six girls,
Wow.
5 boys. Yes. And growing up, like, especially for the girls, like all of us having a lot of hair, like, was a big deal. And I in particular did not like getting my hair done. I went through the phase of getting a relaxer. My hair and my scalp didn't react too well with the relaxer. So between being a person who didn't like getting their hair done and always like basically having challenges with chemical, and just it not being done correctly on me at the time, it was just one of those things of like, what do we do with her hair? What Breanna's a child, like everybody has beautiful hair, but like we're still trying to find like her look or
Yeah.
her like go-to style growing up. And so I went through a phase of just like hopping online, seeing all these like, new YouTubers. YouTube was like really becoming a thing back in like 2004 and like around that time. And so I was watching like little, as time passed, like people popping up talking about their hair. And I remember watching that as like a 13 year old and being like, I can do that.
Uh-huh.
So I got a camera. I got like in my parents' bathroom, and I was just like recording like, okay, we have this product and I'm gonna do this. So did that for a while, and I got contacted by two companies. I had my little email that of course you had to set up um
Uh-huh.
in order to have an account in. I had it at the bottom because all YouTubers had like business inquiries. So I just copied and pasted that and put my email on it. And I got like two companies who sent me an email and said, would you like to try, our products? My parents thought it was fake.
Uh-huh.
Brianna, like, no, 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 no. And then they sent it again. And my mom was like, let's just see. And the company sent me all their new products that had come out. And from that, like from years on out, I was just like reviewing products for them and getting paid like to do it. So I was like, this is really cool. And like, when you're a child, you think $100 is like
Oh
big,
yeah.
like, oh, I've made it. Like, mom, I can pay the bills now. Like, so it's funny because at that time when I reflect on like my mindset, I knew I loved it. I knew I enjoyed it. I was doing my hair, my friends' hair, having a lot of siblings. It wasn't like I had a lot of friends like just coming over to stay and do sleepovers and stuff like that. So that was like my thing, like mom can
Mm-hmm.
so come over and I do her hair. Her mom said it was okay, and my mom's like, okay, as long as you're staying out of trouble.
Right.
So I knew I couldn't have a bunch of girls come over and like, do their hair. So it was like, okay, this is at least like my thing to get somebody over at our house, or my reasoning to go over to somebody else's house.
Yeah.
So it was a fun social, aspect. It fulfilled that for me. Because I was very much an introvert growing up as a child. So I was like, cool, this like makes me the popular girl. Like Brianna did
Uh-huh.
my hair. So imagine me in junior high, all those years of doing that and only thinking of, the hair industry as like, oh no, this is a hobby.
It's a
I
fun thing.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
it's a fun thing. I want to grow up. I want to do something else. Like this is just servicing like this aspect of, my life, my youth.
Mm-hmm.
As time went on and I got, to high school and conversation about college began, coming up, then it was like, you should just do hair. You should just, and I just didn't like that.
At that point, did you still have your YouTube channel?
I did not as much because once I got to high school, I went through a phase of not wanting to tell anybody that I was on YouTube and trying to like re-identify myself. And I thought like, oh, my old videos were immature and like that was old me.
Mm.
So, yeah, I just kind of went through a phase where I did an occasional one, and I didn't tell anybody until maybe my junior and senior year that some I don't know how, but I was doing hair and I think word got out that Breanna's on YouTube. And I just remember like the high school newspaper like contacted me and they're like, hey, we want to watch like do this article, and they had already had like photos of my YouTube stuff like all together. And they were like, we just want to like get your input. Like, when did this start? And so that kind of like towards the end of my, high school years, it came up again. And I was like, I was trying to hide that. Like, so but yeah, it was a phase of just like not wanting to associate that as a career. And I think what the reason why is because like everybody's talking about what college you're going to, they're like this university and I want to like move away to that. And so you kind of get caught up in just like not thinking about like what actually makes you happy. And I did know that I wanted to go to business school. I knew that at some point when I wanted to do hair that I did want to do some business certification. So I just pretty much like led with that because it sounded more,
Yeah,
better,
respectable.
more
Yeah.
respectful. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just tell people like, "Oh, I'm going to business school." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool, cool, cool." And so didn't really talk much about hair. But I kind of like lost a little bit of what the question you asked me about like
Oh,
um but yeah, it's okay. But pretty much like as that transpired and it got to the end of my year for me to finally make a selection, thankfully I did receive, some scholarships at that time. And it was like, okay, do I want to utilize this for a school or like a cosmetology school or for university? And Kansas, the schools, cosmetology schools at that time were kind of going through a lot.
oh, really?
Yeah, meaning like we had 3 different schools shut down, like back to back within like a year. And that was really huge and also like really nerve-wracking for me because I saw some of my older friends who had gone through cosmetology or just like my siblings, their peers that had gone to cosmetology school. And because the school shut down, they lost their hours and they had to start over. And that was
Oh,
so scary
man.
to me. And I knew that, I had just received this scholarship money. I did not want to waste it. And so at that time, it was like, make a decision fast, and put it somewhere where I know, like, it's not going to get messed up. So, um, at the time I was really trying to go somewhere local, meaning like 5-10 minutes up the road, and so because that happened, that just really became scary for me. And the one school that I did get ready to like commit to, I went that Friday, talked to the people like, to get it set up, and they said to come back and make my payment the following Friday. Nothing but God, because that Tuesday, I think they called, it was a voice recording, and it said, "Hi, this is da da da, such and such cosmetology school. We have just like all schools have just been shut down permanently across the country." And I was supposed to go that Saturday, like, and make my payment to start school. So when that
What?
happened, yes, I was nervous, I was scared, but I was like, I'm not even going to complain because I'm so happy that it happened, when it did. And I went ahead and started at the University of Kansas until I had a for sure, a for sure decision on which school I was going to go to. So, started at KU, did 2 years there. Um, while I was in school for those 2 years, I finally selected a cosmetology school I wanted to go to. And I just took a brief break to go get my cosmetology license because my brother, who is also a barber, and had been a barber for maybe like 6 or 7 years at the time, or 5, something like that. And we'd always talked about like at some point we're gonna have a studio. We're gonna have a half barbershop, half salon. And so he was ready to start his place. He had already owned 2 smaller or worked at 2 smaller and owned 1 smaller barbershop. And he was like, the next place I want to work at, like I want it to be the place. So
Mm-hmm.
he came to me and he was like, when are you going to school? So that put fire under my feet and I had to get my act together, go to school. I say I took a break, but in all reality, when I think about it, there was a community college 5 minutes away from the cosmetology school. So I just transferred some of my hours to that school. So I was going to cosmetology school and like college at the same time, like from 8 to like 10 in the evening. Like it was a ridiculous schedule, but it's over now. It's so over now, and I'm just thankful. I would never do it again, but I'm just glad that, you know, we finished. So after I graduated cosmetology school, went back to KU, immediately finished up my last 2 years, and I graduated KU in 2020 with a
Okay.
business degree in management and entrepreneurship. So
Nice.
yeah.
What a fun story. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's wild. So, do you know why all those beauty colleges were shutting down nationwide?
Um, I now that I've had like we can get into, you know, like working with the state a little bit later, but now that I have like some brief experience on like how different things work with like legislation and government and stuff like that, I know that I don't know the full story, but I know that there are, you know, pretty strict requirements as far as like your turnover rates of, you know, staff to student ratios, and making sure that, you know, are your students paying, you know, are they being able to one pay for school and then also become um employed after school. And so when that gets off and when they're smaller or non-accredited schools, like that does become challenging. And so there was a lot actually going around. It wasn't just specifically Kansas, but there was just a lot going on, I believe, with other states and people just like, you know, legislation cracking down on that. And, you know, the industry sometimes is very high turnover. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there was just a lot with, you know, loans not
So,
being paid off. Yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah,
So
and it
it was
just
more
turned
like a kind of particulars that ended up shutting
yeah,
them down. Okay. I
yeah,
know there were some beauty colleges in Nevada that were shut down because of like embezzlement within like the
yeah.
corporation. So it was like a totally different problem, but I was just curious if it was like something similar
Yeah,
or
the one that I was getting ready to go to, like I hope there was nothing crazy going on, but I will say that one was more shocking to me because that was like they had maybe 20 something locations like across the US. So it wasn't just Kansas. That one was shocking. So I don't know quite what was going on there, but they had different locations and I was like, okay, that's crazy. What was going on with that? I ended up going to Paul Mitchell in it's like Overland Park area, which is about 35, 40-ish minutes away from me. So yeah, I just commuted. I figured that, you know, Paul Mitchell is a well-known name, you know, so when I was looking at schools, I was like, I mean, sorry to any private, you know, a small business owner, but it was scary to me because that quickly I could have just lost, you know, money um that I was gonna pay for school for.
totally. It
And
doesn't instill confidence in you either when
yeah,
you're like,
yeah. So
okay.
and I know like they were like, what's going on and everything like that. And I know they were concerned too. It increased a lot of concern for just people wanting to start school during that time period. 'Cause a lot of students like had the same experience. They're like, oh, you were gonna go to that school, like, and some of them had lost their money. They're like, I was getting ready to start and they couldn't
Jeez,
start anymore.
that's
And I
so
was like, are you gonna
terrifying.
get your money back? And they're like, no, you know, like you can't even contact anybody. So I know that there was if it was loans these past couple of years during the like COVID relief, a few stylists have told me like in the area that there was finally a settlement of just like clearing some of their loans from their previous school, but they do have to obviously, like cover whatever school that they did go to. So
Yeah.
thankfully, I'm thankful for them, but I'm like, I'm glad I was not.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Seriously. So yeah, I feel like this is kind of a natural lead into my next question, which is are you on the state board,
So,
or tell me what did you do next, I guess.
so, um, so over the pandemic, I want to say like 2019, 2020, early 2020, I was contacted by governor's office to be a member on state board. And so funny story, I ended up declining the position.
Okay.
I've always had a passion for like wanting to work, with state board on that level, but with everything that was going on during the pandemic and all the salons getting shut down, like all I imagined was that's what we were going to have to deal with. So I knew a couple of people who were on the board at the time. So I contacted them before I even made my decision. And I said, hey, like just got this information. And of course, they're like, oh my goodness, Breanna, we want you. Like, we need somebody. But they were very transparent with me that because of the time period and everything that was going on, that the only cases that they were dealing with were COVID related, in making decisions. And obviously, the state board cannot, like, they couldn't make decisions as to whether a salon was going to shut down, only the government could,
Yeah.
but they still had to be the middleman to like respond and kind of handle that. And I wasn't interested.
Hmm.
So I said no, and then they were like, "Oh my goodness, but like we've been watching you and we know what you do. Like what would get you, like do we need to wait until after some of this like dies down?" But then also like nobody knew when when the pandemic, the height
Right.
of it was going to
Yeah.
die down. So I just specifically expressed to them like, okay, I'm super passionate about the education portion. And they had a subcommittee that worked basically with still the same people from state board, but they had a specific just education subcommittee. So that is the committee I work on. I work very closely with, all of the members who are on the committee are also on state board. So it's funny because I feel like they still try to like, Breanna, you should just literally we're all the same people. This is the experience.
Uh-huh.
But and I love working with them. It's been, we've had some ups and downs, but it's been a pretty good experience. But I'm like, education is my passion.
Yeah.
Not really all of the other
Yeah.
aspects,
Right.
obviously my consulting and advice, I don't mind contributing, but yeah, that's what I do. That's my position is
Okay.
board member on.
I want to back up for a second and ask you, what were you doing in your business and your life that made them so attracted to you? Like for other hairstylists out there that might be interested in somehow getting
Yeah.
involved, what were you doing?
Um, so a couple of things. I definitely was like I networked a lot. I had already into my first to second year of being a hairstylist, I already acknowledged and understood that curl education was something that was missing in schools. So within 6 months to a year after me graduating, and I went and took all these curl certifications, like I knew that when I was sitting in those classes being a student that I was like observing, I was attending the class to learn, but I also was attending those classes and watching the instructors because I really wanted to be an instructor too. And so I was able to like ask myself those questions and acknowledge that early on that like, okay, may not be now, but at some point I want to take that route. When I got back home, because I went to New York and New Jersey to do a lot of those trainings, um, I immediately started going back to nearby cosmetology schools as guest artist. And then as I communicated with the cosmetology schools, it was like, hey, can we make this a regular thing? Can I do some like consulting projects to help maybe increase your the first of all the instructor's understanding of working with curly hair,
Right.
and then also how does that lead into increasing your students understanding? And so There's always some challenges there. And so once I like I said, you put yourself out there, you start networking not only with just schools, but your nearby salons. I literally was just walking. I'd be downtown walking, in our area and see a salon and just be like, hey, now I will say there is definitely a huge challenge in doing that because as you're aware, working in the hair industry, some people can be a little bit more like standoffish or catty, and
Yes.
I just don't take that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I came here with all honesty and to be polite to you. So, and there's like no hidden agenda, like, and I know that working in the salon that I had, or like the salon that we owned, a lot of the clients I would ask, how did you find out about us, or what was your prior story? And so a lot of them were saying, I went to this salon and I got messed up, or I had these challenges and stuff like that. And I knew it wasn't specifically geared at a specific stylist, but this is across the board, you know?
Right. Right.
So I just really wanted to showcase that, guys, I know that I'm a salon in the community. We were the first multicultural salon and barbershop like in our area. So very quickly people were like, oh, if you want to know something, go there, go there. And I'm like, I love what you all are doing, but we're also not the go-to because you don't know. Like when are
Yeah.
you going to learn? When are you going to know? So um I just, as people saw me in the community, they were like, oh, like don't talk to her. And so I just really wanted to put myself out there and show that
Yeah.
I'm welcoming. So I would just walk in and be like, oh, I was getting lunch next door. I own what's it called? I just want to come and say hi, like, and if you guys ever want to do education, like we host classes at our salon sometimes, Um, so yeah, it was for anybody who's interested, you gotta just really stick with it because you
Hmm.
will get some people who are like, I don't want to talk to you. And even people who I was, super nice to and expressive, like it took them about 6 months to a year to finally go, okay, I need to come talk to you, and I understood. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
Because we all have a battle in this industry where we have to fight on our own. We go
Yep.
through school and we kind of like start off on this we start off as a group and as a community, and then as you get towards the end of your career you kind of get thrown into the like
Yeah.
to the ocean, with all the other sharks and stuff, and it's like you got to survive. We're all on our own now. So I do understand that that's just something we deal with, and it's a little bit traumatizing to us to let our guard down, but I just wanted to in any way break that ice, break that barrier, so that I could be a resource.
Well, and I wonder too, at that same time, it seems like curly hair started having a real moment too.
Yeah.
And so most people have some sort of undulations in their hair, right? And if you
Right.
don't know how to do that, then you start really missing out on money when all of your clients are coming in and being like, I want to have more of a lived in curly, I want to explore my natural textures. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh crap, I can't
It,
send everyone to the salon down the street. I better learn something.
exactly. It's so easy to say like, oh, a walk-in comes in, I don't have a relationship with this person, so sorry, go to somewhere else. But when your own clients are starting to make that shift, you're like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
I need to like
Whoa, hold on. Uh-huh. I
yeah,
gotta
so
shift, gotta change, pivot, figure things out.
that kind of transitions a little bit into like when the pandemic was going on. There was also a lot of rise in the conversation of Black Lives Matter. And so it kind of brought up some racial like controversy, especially in the salon setting. Because like everybody comes, they talk about, literally anything from personal life to politics. Like whether we try to deter it or not, it's gonna come up. And so
Right.
we were put in an interesting perspective because being a salon and barbershop owned by, a Black woman and a Black man, my brother, like that is obviously a conversation. There's a way of any clients coming in and asking us questions. It was like, oh, that's something that I can answer from experience. But very quickly I had messages online in my email. I even had stylists who called our salon directly and they would be like, "Hi, is Brianna there?" And the other stylist would bring me the phone and they're like, "I'm having a situation. I have a client in my chair and she's making me very irritated because of what they're saying, and we don't know the dialogue, how to have these conversations because as much as they teach us in school, veer away from politics, veer away from you can't veer away from your peace and your humanity. Like those are things that when someone, yes, you want to operate a business, but there's certain conversations that you can't. They say silence is violence, and I'm appreciative, that they reached out because I know it was tough. I know that, and they're like, we just don't know what to say, but this is a huge conversation in all of our spaces right now
Right.
amongst the pandemic happening. So we did a class called Breaking Barriers. We opened up our salon for people in the community to come and attend this class where we laid out kind of the history of how, obviously, when a lot of things were arising, especially with the George Floyd and all of the different individuals, that going through police brutality and things like that, like we couldn't attest and speak on every other industry, but pertaining to our industry, we did have to acknowledge, like, do we understand the history of like why there's so much division in our industry and why, curls are really excluded. Reflecting back to college really quick, that's a topic I'm really passionate about. So I did specific assignments just to kind of like understand like our years of our history and the timeline of how things happen. So we opened up our space to have that conversation, to acknowledge like how our industry became an industry. Obviously, people have been doing hair for years on out. Everybody has hair, but when it became like more regulated and acknowledged as, as an industry, and seeing how there was a lot of written divisions already put in stone that, hey, we're going to have these schools, white schools and black schools, and how some of that curriculum has never been rewritten for years on out, and currently for a lot of states still up until this day.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that information like stylists did not know, and it wasn't to point fingers at stylists and say like the problem is you or the problem is us, but it's like we're still operating off of a systematic racism, so how do we acknowledge that and stop waiting on the head guy upstairs to solve the problem and start solving it little by little within our own spaces and behind our chair. So that really was eye-opening to people within our community. There's people who traveled in from, the nearby states for that conversation. We had 3 different sessions, and it was like 40. I think our first session was like 45, then it was like 30, then it was 50 people, and then different salons were like, can you come and have this class with, our staff members? And so that was the big transitioning point because media got in on it. They came and recorded it, everything. And that's when I was contacted by the state board,
Gotcha.
actually by the governor's office, because there was a vacant spot. And so that's how that transpired, is just, like I said, putting yourself out there and realizing that you have to be somebody, who's trying to change the industry, and also becoming amongst, known amongst your professional peers and things like that. So
So, real
mhm.
quick, what were you teaching in these classes? Was it more like how to have conversations, or were you teaching like hair techniques to better serve those people as well?
It was actually how to have conversations. I think it's important. As much as I wanted to dive deep, I was doing hands-on classes during that time. But one thing I also realized with some of my hands-on classes is that people were coming to class, they were doing a phenomenal job with their model, and then they would go back to their salon and not utilize it. And there
Mm.
was still this internal fear, and I would always call and check in with people and say, hey, like, like it's 3 months past, like, how's things going? Have you brought in your next model? You did a phenomenal job. Like, here's your work if you need reminding that you did a good job. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm somebody who at some point we're gonna talk and the nitty-gritty is gonna come out, and it always ended up being like I'm still scared. And I was like, okay, why are you scared? Is it, I just don't know how to acknowledge the client in the room, or to have this conversation. And sometimes we as hairstylists or we as an industry get caught up in skin color and not looking at hair is
Uh-huh.
hair.
Yeah.
We get told that saying and we may say it, hair is hair, but there's still this internal feeling of like, but I don't identify. I don't know if we have separate experiences, if I can really service a client because they look different from us. And so
Interesting.
um that's just one thing, it wasn't every single person who attended class, but the few people that I thought, excelled, they excelled because they were like, I felt comfortable because you were standing there. And it doesn't have to be another Black person. It could be, a mixed person or Native American or Mexican, like just because they looked different from you, that became a barrier of just like, I'm just gonna stick with my clientele who usually comes to me.
Mm.
Like, but you just invested so that you can bring all the
Yeah.
different, curl patterns in, and different curl patterns means you're going to meet different races.
Right.
Um, in Kansas, being where we are, being in the Midwest, like that is something that, we still, socially and government wise, like have challenges with. But it was something that it was like, okay, this is your business. Are we really gonna do this? Um, no, we were not the salon to service, multicultural clientele. There's always been salons out here in stylists who individually have like said, oh, I can do it. But they say it with hesitation. So to publicly make that statement of like anybody can come here, I don't care whether you have straight hair, curly hair, like you could be getting a perm and sitting across from somebody who's getting her hair box braided. That was a
Yeah.
statement in our region that like, oh wow, this is what a multicultural salon is. It's not just multicultural like that's a Black salon. This is like, no, you see literally everybody in here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where that conversation is, just being able to talk about it and to have the conversation led by somebody who is comfortable talking about it. Because sometimes you go to these classes and it's like, okay, we're going to put the table out there and everybody is sugarcoating things. And it's like, hey, if you need to cry right now, like literally, like let it out because this is what's going to make you comfortable so that you
Totally.
can go back and work behind the chair with confidence.
Yes. And be that safe space for your client too.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, that's really what we all are, right? Is like whether or not we want to be, we are a comfortable, or we should be a comfortable and
Yeah.
safe space for our clients to just be whoever they need to be, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, so then to bring back to the state board, what was the name of the committee that you're on?
the education committee. Yes.
The education committee. So, are you proposing extra education to be taught in the beauty schools to incorporate more like multicultural education, or like what are you doing with that
Yeah.
situation?
So, we've actually thankfully like I guess before I like acknowledge that currently we have rewritten the curriculum and it's sitting in the review process like with legislation right now, which that is a long process to go through, but at least like for the most part their curriculum that we have proposed seems to be like in its final like approved stages of like reviewing it with the schools and things like that. Now we just need the government to do the final signature on it, so that can take some time. So but what the curriculum essentially looks like and is made up of is we did not look at the curriculum to increase the hours. In the state of Kansas, you have 1,500 hours, and cosmetology actually includes not just hair, but a little bit of skin and nails and makeup.
Uh-huh.
I know in different states they actually have that separated out, but that's how our curriculum, our cosmetology licensing is made up of.
Right.
So we didn't want to mess with the 1,500 hours. If anything, if there was a chance to reduce the hours, that would be awesome, because our conversation that first came up when we started our reopened up this case of rewriting the curriculum, because they've attempted it, you know, in years past, but they didn't really know what angle and what to do. Um,
Okay.
there's so many reasons on why, you know,
Yeah.
it's started and stopped so many times. But when I came into it, the first question was like, how long ago was the curriculum actually edited? And at the time, it was like 27 years. And when they edited it 27 years ago, it was when they did the implementation of nail hours in the curriculum.
Mm.
That was it. So prior to that, it was like 30 something years where they just shifted hours, but nothing was like changed up as far as topics,
Yeah.
um, things like that. So our first thing was to identify the current problems. And one, we have students who are spending 1,500 hours in school and they are not learning all the topics. So the question then came up, is it because there's not enough time to teach these topics? The answer to that was no, there's plenty enough time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, yes, everybody has the story of like, oh, I spent all this time, you know, being in theory class, doing hands-on work, and then you have this whole chunk of like 400 hours where you were sitting there waiting. Like, I would even say 400 to 500 hours where you were just kind of like fiddling your fingers and talking to your friends. So we acknowledged very quickly, and we gathered that up-to-date information by giving surveys to the current, like, you know, past students and then also current students, and then also instructors. So once we, you know, acknowledged that that was the current state, we were like, okay, we're not increasing hours. Now we need to identify what people feel like they're spending the most time on. And I don't quote me on this, but I know definitely there was a high percentage of the curriculum that was dedicated to perms.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Same in California where I was originally licensed too. And I'm like, really?
yes,
Okay.
I almost want to say we calculated out. I want to say it was like 30%, something like that, but I'll have to look back at it at some point. But it was a large chunk that was just like, what do you need to spend into 100 and something perms for, you know?
Yes. Yes. Which
So
I've like never done in my career.
exactly. So we also want to keep in mind that like we're not trying to get rid of perms. Like those, that's still something that comes up, but we started identifying like all these different hours where it was like, okay, why are you doing that? Like, let's be realistic. What do they really need to practice on? There was a lot of hours that was dedicated to blow drying. And we started to identify that, like, yes, blow drying is important, but you're also duplicating so many of these hours when you say blow drying specifically, say 100 blow dries, 100 flat irons, 100, you know, like obviously you can't flat iron until you blow dry, you know, so
Yes.
you had to like really reduce all of that down. And then we had all of these hours that honestly were left over. So we got a little bit more specific about the coloring techniques, because a lot of the curriculum was very generic and basic coloring techniques. And we had some overachieving schools that were teaching different balayage techniques, and things like that. But like it should become a requirement because you already have the supplies to do these techniques in the salon. So why aren't you teaching the students to do, you know, a foliage or combined techniques and not
Right.
doing them all separate? Because this is what they're going to be doing in the salon. So
Yes.
essentially we just like really became specific about the different techniques that were more current, obviously the basic ones, but then the more advanced techniques. We did we did expand significantly the area of texture. And so texture at the time, what it looked like was relaxers and perms.
Yeah.
So
Or a press and curl.
exactly. So we got very specific about like what that includes. Um and when I remember at some point when we were getting ready to submit that, they said, "Well, you can't add like too many new categories." And it, like, at one point I felt a little bit defeated because I'm sitting in this meeting and I'm like, so what are we doing? You know, like, I'm like, I really can't with y'all because you want me to do my job. You want me to like specifically hone in. I was brought in like as the main consultant for the texture category and the color. It was me and another lady who did color as well. And I was like, okay, like, this is ridiculous. Like, if, and so basically our loophole was there, I think what they call it is like a shampoo set.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the older term, is like where they shampoo and then they set the hair on rollers. And
Yes.
so there was a lot of hours dedicated to that, and we looked at the definition for a shampoo set and it just said like wet setting the hair. So
Ding.
yeah,
Yeah.
we started like putting like natural curl setting the hair like in that category, and they were like, okay, we can do that, you know. They were like, what is silk pressing? And I was like, that's thermal work, you know, like stop sectioning it out. And so at one point it came up, before we even started like finding loopholes, is should we just create a whole separate curriculum for natural hair? And I was like, no,
No.
is obviously, if someone wants to do specialty work, the school is just there to teach you the basics and give you introductory work. But like, we're not excluding, like, this is the current challenge we're having now. So we're trying to have a place at the table, not create a separate, you know, table. And so
Yes.
it was just kind of going, when I tell you like month after month, I thought it would be an easy conversation, but there was weeks where every Tuesday morning, 7, 8 in the morning, we get on the call and I was like, so what did we just spend 2 hours talking about, you know? But at some point after about a year and a half, we did start finding loopholes.
Mm-hmm.
And loopholes that were more that the older, if I could say, the older board members were okay with, because that is something we had to deal with. That is, in all honesty, is like, you know, people who've been in the industry for a long time don't always like change. And so it was like, okay, so how do we explain it to them? So when we explained the loopholes, they're like, oh, okay, you know, I like that. And the funny thing that I thought was interesting is, even when we were talking about the implementation of like different curl setting techniques and stuff like that, like some of these board members had curly hair themselves, you know. So I was like,
Yeah.
where, you know, it was just constant conversation about like, so how did you do your hair? Oh, I can't find anybody to do my hair. And I'm like, exactly, this is why we need to move forward. So yeah,
So
that was,
then, with the implementation of some of these new, I'm air quoting, new techniques, right?
yeah.
Being put into the education, are they also going to add that into what's tested in order to get licensed?
So that's
Or is that the like
another
tricky part?
challenge. It's
Okay.
tricky because in most states, I don't think people know this, but like, you have the board and then you kind of have like this testing, third-party testing organization that, yes, the board helps and provides consulting as to what is on the test, and they can rewrite the, you know, the test curriculum. But as much as I would love to say like the education committee handles all things under education, with government, they kind of like break committees up too much.
Mm,
So while we were working on this, that was one question that actually came up. And there was some challenges that were happening with our, like specifically to the state of Kansas, our testing center at the time. And they got rid of the practical as we were working on the curriculum. So
mm.
complete, when I say complete shock, we got on the call that morning and it was like, oh, hey guys, it was voted yesterday, no more practical. And we're like,
Like at all?
at all. So the state of Kansas actually currently just does 2 written, and that happened, that was implemented, I believe, 2 years ago.
Wow.
So, and that was a completely different committee. And sometimes, sadly, some of these committees don't really have a lot of people who are current professionals, or, you know, or they, when it comes to voting day, like they don't, it's not announced to all of, the professionals in the industry, so there's only a few people there to vote on it.
Mm.
So that's the sad part about like working in
Yeah.
the government. Like it's just I'm like you feel defeated, but you're
Mm-hmm.
just always trying to look at the end goal, the immediate goal, and even with the practical being gone, yeah, the practical never like indicated whether somebody can do hair. So I had to like refocus and be like, it's not the end of the day. They still need hands-on work. Um,
Yes.
and even when we are trying to push a new curriculum, the government, as much as we say, oh, these are new techniques, they're up to date, the government really is more so concerned about public safety.
That's
And so
it. Yeah.
it's like you're always trying to word. I know when I'm talking to a student, I'm not going to say, "Hey guys, we're going to learn a public safety, technique today." Like they don't care. They
Yeah.
don't care
Yeah.
about like
That's
yes,
not sexy.
yeah, it's not. So, but to the government, I'm like, this is important because, of this chemical can cause this, or mentally there's proof that blah, blah, blah of this demographic of people are not getting serviced. And like, there's just a lot of more so like, that's how you speak to the government. And then they also, I'll say public safety and monetarily, like that's literally all
Right.
they're they're like, okay, does this get people graduated and do they now become successful like working citizens, and that's where it comes into play. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all these different kind of like hats of like,
Yeah.
okay,
And that's just for your state too. That's the
yeah,
craziest part is like there could be someone, there could be a Brianna, sorry, in every state doing the same thing, but like differently.
yeah,
And I really wish there was some sort, I'm sure you wish too, like some sort of entity as
yeah,
like a whole that would say for the whole country, these are the standards. This is what needs to happen in order to get into this industry. It would make us more respected getting into the industry and probably like make people feel more empowered to
yeah. And
do
like
better.
for the different stylists that are moving state to state, like they don't
Yes.
honestly feel like, okay, yes, reciprocity like exists in states, but it's like some states really feel like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I moved thinking I could just transfer my license, and then I found out that that state has 500 more hours than the state but I've been a stylist for 20 years. Like it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really crazy. So, there's a lot of work to be done. And I always tell stylists because people are like, what can we be doing? And do we just wait on change to come? And the reality is that everything, even if all states just started rewriting their curriculum right now, it is not going to affect the current professionals.
No.
You learned what you learned. I encourage you to go do continued education. Like I highly, highly recommend, even if it's not a requirement in your state, because a lot of states are trying to reduce the different departments that they have because of monetary, like they don't want to have to keep paying all these departments. So you see a lot of states getting rid of continued education as a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So you as an individual and a professional have to hold yourself to standards to figure out like what work do you want to put out and what do you want to also convey to the next like aspiring professional, because they're looking up to you. The ones who are out here like speaking up, being a heavy hitter in the industry, whether it's working behind the chair or whether it's just like, doing a podcast, like whatever it is, there's still so many aspects to being a part of this industry that you just have to find your niche and speak up and
Mm-hmm.
hold your ground. And so I just always tell people like whatever you're gonna do, like just make sure that you're doing it from a perspective of educating yourself, educating someone else, like not
Yeah.
everybody's an educator. So I'm not like trying to push. If that's not your comfort zone, then just make sure that are you are well rounded. Because
Yeah.
when you come in a box and cookie cutter and a one trick pony, like
Yes.
kind of just you're keeping everybody like,
Down.
yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah.
Typically those stylists who are doing that to themselves are the ones who are calling and they're like, I'm not making enough money. I don't think I can make it in this industry. So the big wake up call is when they finally like seek education and they see that, wow, if I just expanded my knowledge, I could have
Yeah.
went to level 2, level 3, So
Yep.
um that is that's kind of what we have to do. There's some odds, I think we briefly talked about it a little bit, but there's some odds that are still against us in other states, in the discussion of deregulation, that's like a whole nother department, and
Yeah.
the scary thing is that I'm just not saying that we're concerned about it immediately right now, but with the concept in people speaking about deregulation, it's like, well, let me sit back and think. If one day that they just said that the cosmetology license did not exist, yes, that would cause a little bit of turmoil, a lot of turmoil,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to our
Yeah.
industry. It definitely would,
Mm-hmm.
but it also eliminates a lot of the restrictions that we're currently dealing with. So I'm just trying to I'm trying to advocate for both sides and understanding that if this were to happen, am I going to lose all hope in my industry and feel like I can't? No, I'm not.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not. And there's so many other countries that actually already operate like this, and they operate more like an apprentice program where I'm like, whatever happens, I just want to make sure I'm doing my part to make sure I'm doing hair correctly behind my chair, that I'm educating correctly, and that I hopefully am inspiring somebody else to take my place because I will not be doing this forever.
Yeah. Yeah. You
So,
know what really needs to happen, regardless of deregulation, is I feel like industry leaders need to collaborate and come together to make
yes,
definitions of things that we can all agree on, right? First,
correct.
we have definitions, and then we have education within those definitions, and then there is a national standard that we've created for what success looks like, right? Like what do you do in this case? What do you do in this case? And it's not like the right or wrong, but it's like it's a foundation that we all agree on, right? Because it's
Yes,
like we're artists, and so everything is like you can just make up a word and create something, and there's no rules around it. And that is so
exactly.
confusing for so
It
many
is.
people.
It is. And like that is one thing that when I like started sitting down and writing curriculum for my own self, I was like, okay, there are scientific like curology is the study of curls. Like literally I want to make sure that everything is based on, science and facts, because if you want to dissect anything that I just like
Yeah.
about, like literally it makes sense. And so
Right.
um you are absolutely right, because even as all of these independent educators are kind of popping up everywhere, one, I give them their, like kudos to you all, because it takes a lot to be an educator. I'm speaking from experience, and I'm very grateful to, a lot of these people who are taking the initiative to say, hey, I want to educate. But then also once again, kind of a catty industry, whether we like it or not, there's just some history in it that it does sometimes like end up being my education, your education. And it's like, okay, so if we could all, I would very much appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And also just collaborating with other educators, because it's become so helpful.
Yeah. I think the cattiness, a lot of the time, obviously this is just my opinion, but I think people feel like, okay, so I could be this person who has spent years and thousands of dollars to increase my education, and yet I hold the same license as Betty down the street
Yeah.
who's had the same license for 40 years and has never taken a class in her life. And so I have to make myself look special, right? And so I hold it close because it's
Oh yeah.
mine, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if there was some sort of like widely accepted, almost standard, whether it's a certification or whatever, where we all are like, I'm going to aspire to this,
Yeah.
right? Then it might just be more like everyone supporting each other to get elevated instead of like trying to, differentiate. It'd be like obvious, right? Like
No,
maybe we call it something like hairology. I don't know, right? Where you're like, yeah, like oh yeah, I'm into hairology. You're like, cool, you got it. I know.
That's what cosmetology is supposed to
It
be.
is,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Like that's what we all should have like acknowledged. And my side note, because I always want to clarify this, even when I say this statement in class, where I'm like, guys, cut it with the like, because you can't grow when you're just constantly looking over at somebody else. Like focus on yourself and expand. But for those, what I always have to say to those who are like, I'm just trying to hold on for dear life. I'm like, especially for those who are entering education, like one, there's a difference between charging your worth. Like obviously as an educator and also as a stylist, like you need to make sure your work is speaking and also you're charging your worth. And that definitely starts to distinguish and like separate you out. And so I never
Yeah.
want to say like, oh, don't like cut the cattiness and like let's all just be friends. There's
Yeah.
always still different angles to understanding, but yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely challenging. We still got to speak the truth like at the end of the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so now I want to know because I've seen you posting on your social media for your curl classes.
Yeah.
So obviously, we know you want to teach hairstylists how to work with tight textures and curly hair, but you're also teaching classes to the community, which is like, oh, I love this. So
Yes.
tell me about that a little bit.
Okay, awesome. So, my overall goal, like that I always remind myself every day is that like the whole reason I'm doing this is because I want to do my part in making curly hair resources, whether that's education, products, skills, tools, whatever the case may be, more accessible. So, long story short, if I get to the day where years on and they're like, oh, there's no more curl specialty because it's like standard, that would be amazing. Um, I think that there is a part to be played in both the professional sector to understand how to treat curls and work with curls, whether that's styling, cutting, coloring, basics to extreme, whatever the case is, like you need to know what you're doing when it comes to textured hair. But we know that as professionals, this is a two-way street. We can't have like professional,
Amen, sister.
yes, like you can't have the consumer like mistreating their hair and just thinking you're gonna save it in one session. And
Yes.
the consumers are the ones who are growing up with this hair since they're born, and for some people, like maybe they went through something hormonal or just like a transition in life where maybe they had straight hair and then all of a sudden like things started changing and they're like, maybe I'm switching up my hair and I've never experienced this before. So the more that we can teach consumers what the things to look for helps us do our jobs better. And also it really helps like empower the consumer and empower, our clients like in realizing that this is the hair that you go home with. At the end of the day, I know you leave the salon and you're happy, but like what happens the next day after I'm not there? Like I'm not
Yes.
gonna be sitting there at your mirror like, all right, Miss Susie, get your hair done. Like so
Yeah.
the more that I can like instill confidence long term into that client, like one, like it does allow us to service even more clients. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge wake up call, like for me, because I'm so used to being told like have your clients and see them on like a 2-week basis. But when I really started like organizing my curl services, there was clients I don't see like but once every 2 months, once every 3 months. And for some clients who travel in to see me, it's like twice a year, or one times a year.
Right.
And when they come in, like it just makes me so proud when they're like, I've been doing everything that you've been telling me to do. Their color looks wonderful, their ends look wonderful, like, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like the more that I can teach the client means that they're set up, for
And they're
success.
happy.
Yes.
Yes.
And they're teaching their children in the next generation, and we're really shifting like the storyline, the story plot of like this next generation that's growing up with textured hair and
Mm-hmm.
having these like, oh yeah, I had like a crazy second grade picture because my mom did it, like
Yep.
or like I had to go through a relaxer. And it's just awesome to like hear that from the children who are coming in, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm low key jealous. I'm low key jealous of the experience they're having, but I'm happy. I'm
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. You have that like I get my awkward picture and I'm proud of it kind of
Yeah, I'm
moment.
like, girl, you're there. And I've had children who've been like, I took photos, Brianna. Like, look how my mom did my hair. And I'm like, wow, you look
Oh,
great like a model in
I
your first
know.
grade picture. And mine was like, let's
Hmm.
talk about it.
Yes, yes. Oh, that
So,
is so awesome. I love that so
mm,
much. My I guess shtick in this whole education space is I feel like I'm a communication specialist, right? And
yeah,
like my in my heart of hearts, I would love to help more clients and hairstylists communicate better. And like you said, like that's a two-way street, whether no matter what type of hair you're talking about. And so to hear someone else talking about how it goes both ways and like you have to empower the client and also the hairstylist and then everyone's happy. Just
yeah.
makes me so
I love
happy.
I love that you said that because I was on call with a stylist actually last week, and the conversation was centered around why don't clients speak up when they maybe are dissatisfied with their hair. And she was telling me about like, some different situations that she has experienced, and then also, everything's on social media. So there was just kind of different posts going around, and everybody was like, well, it's on the client. Why did she not say anything? And I'm like, I'm not picking anybody's sides because as professionals, like we do need to build our like intuition and like in commuting and nonverbal skills and
Awareness.
yes, awareness. Thank you. And I'm
Mhm.
just like, just even watching some of the videos, I'm like, I already can feel the tense, like in like there, yeah, I'm
Yes.
like, oh my goodness, like I would have already sensed something was off, before
Yes.
to say, hey, your bill is $300, $400, like, yeah. And then there's just so many stories of like, clients who pay it and then say, hey, later on, they finally come up with the courage to say, I was displeased with my hair. And then like professionals are like, well, why did you pay it? And I'm like, this is all communication.
All
This
of
is,
it.
and the consultation is not just about identifying what you're
No.
really doing with the hair. Like there's so many things that
Mhm.
you have to be aware of. So
Totally. And whether that's talking about as a hairstylist being like with honest with your client, like gosh, I honestly don't know what your textured hair needs. I'm going to find out or I will find someone to help you. Like there's simple
yes,
communication skills that would help everybody. Yeah.
yes.
I love it.
I was in a class, and we brought that up. Like, it's okay to just be honest and
Yeah.
and it's like, do people really like that? And it's like, yes, actually, you'd be very surprised that most people would just be like, oh, well, thank you for telling me. Or the times where clients are like, hey, this is my first time, but I feel like I have, admitting where their like level of education,
Mhm.
they're like, I know I have the capability to get you here. Do you want to go there with me? And how many clients actually say yes? Because they don't usually get that from,
Yeah, there's like this facade that we need to fake it till we make it,
yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
like maybe that works in some aspects, but I think when you're like one on one with someone and you're in charge of their hair and you don't actually know what they're doing, it usually doesn't work out very well to do that. Yeah, so to say, like, this is stepping out of my comfort zone, but I feel very confident here. And like maybe we can do a little here off to the side. And how do you feel about that? I
Yeah.
run and operate the same way, and I have never had a client say, no thanks. Because they're
Exactly.
like, oh, well, you seem really confident in what you do know.
Yeah.
So I feel
Good.
like you're going to be honest if you don't know something, Yeah.
Cool. Yes.
Okay, one last question for you. You are an educator for Inner Sense now, which
Yeah,
is
yes.
great. I love, love, love Inner Sense. And that class, by the way, in San Francisco was one of the best classes that I've been to. Just the education was great, the atmosphere was great. I love that the owners of the company are there
Uh,
also. It was just fantastic. But
the team is the team was wonderful. They
so
like
good. Yeah. It was a very diverse day of education too, with like Aaron, the two Aarons with the shags and the curls and the mixing in the bowls, and it was great.
yes.
So I'm curious how long you've worked for InnerSense, and then have you explored other companies as well, or is this like your first company you've worked for? Just kind of, I guess, tell me about that part of you and what you do.
So I have been associated with InnerSense for going on, it's about 5 years. With my education and hands-on like classes, I was really looking for products that one worked on all hair textures and really had that wide spectrum of products that, I can do blowouts with. I can work with loose curls, tight curls, it is very versatile. And so I came across InnerSense looking for that and got my style trial in the kit and started working with it, loved it immediately, and then really like dove deep into understanding like more about the company and learned all about like clean beauty and everything. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is it. So independently was like teaching with classes, having InnerSense be a part, and then I specifically started working like directly with them as an educator last year in January. So
Okay.
this has been like, almost a year and a half now. I'm artistic director um for their education team now. Or there's a group of 7 of us, and so it's just really awesome to be able to like all collaborate, all work together on projects and train other educators to be educators in the community, and then also go out to salons and like teach them about clean beauty. So um InnerSense is like near and dear to my heart. I know that in the past I personally have had like challenges with my hair and like embracing and loving my tight curls. And so when I started like utilizing the product and just utilizing more water soluble like products, it was like a huge like eye opener to, and also like contradicts everything that you kind of get taught like growing up, that your hair like it's unruly and you need the heaviest and the like the most thickest product to
Yeah.
control it. So to like see how that wasn't servicing me and make the switch and feel so much more happier, my scalp feels happier, like all of that, it was like, okay, this is awesome. So yes, I've been with them directly for we're getting closer to 2 years, and it's been a wonderful experience. I get to work a lot with like curriculum development, and InnerSense does a great job of like acknowledging like what your specialties are and allowing us to like get together and um create magic. So
Hmm.
I've got to do product development. I get to test products before they come out to
Oh,
test
I
so
want
they
to ask you about the new product that came out, the scalp
yeah.
stuff.
Oh my goodness,
I
yes.
haven't had my hands on it yet, but I'm like, I know you'll know about it. So tell
Yeah,
me about
yeah.
that.
Okay, so absolutely wonderful. So they have, I'm gonna say the name wrong, but it's like the Renew treatment. That's it's like the pre-wash Renew treatment. And it's phenomenal. It's a great scalp treatment to kind of like, eliminate buildup without a lot of people, they're like looking for that like stripping like
Yeah, like deep
clarifying shampoo.
clarifying.
Yeah, they're
Hmm.
like looking for a deep clarifying. And so we find a lot of people are, when they get introduced to clean beauty, they're like, oh, let me go get like a harsh clarifying. Like, let me cleanse my scalp first and then like start. And it's like, actually, you just need something that's going to gently like uplift that and remove it. And so you have the Renew treatment, which is phenomenal. It's very soothing. It's like a gentle, like I used it. I actually just used it last night. And it's an amazing feeling to like feel squeaky clean, but like in the most like healthiest way possible.
Nice.
It comes with the I always say the material wrong. I don't know if it's quartz, but do
Uh-huh.
you know that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. Like I'm a person who, yeah, massages are great on the scalp, but like if I go too long, like I know I want to like dig in there and like get my hair, like, but you're
Yes.
always cautious of like, I don't want to scratch my scalp. I don't want to like, like
Yes.
obviously damage anything, like with my skin. And so that is like the most soothing, like deep massage, like feeling to have. I know my clients, when I start bringing it more into the salon, they're going to love it having it at home because clients always deal with like, okay, I cleanse the rest of my hair, but I'm not really getting to my scalp good.
Yes.
That is just like an easy access tool to use to get your scalp clean or to like really get the products in there and directly on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And then after you've like washed, styled, they have like a daily serum, like a daily I think it's Renew. I'm trying to think of the exact name, but it's a daily
Uh-huh.
serum that you can use. And that is just to like keep your scalp, hydrated throughout the weeks, throughout the days and things like that. And so I love the formulation of it because a lot of those scalp treatments or like throughout the weeks ones, I see them popping up in a lot of companies and I really have like stayed away from them because one, they're loaded with a lot of heavy oils
Mm-hmm.
and like that's not something that can really create an environment for increasing buildup on your scalp. And I think people get consumed in like the reading of like, oh, this is a natural oil, but I'm like, there's still certain oils that can clog your pores. So it's more than just like creating a concoction of oils and just like putting it on your scalp all the time. And so I definitely like utilizing it. I can feel like the peppermint sensation, like it's very absorbative, like into the skin. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely keeps your scalp like hydrated, especially like during the dry. I almost like wish it came out like a little
I
bit early.
know. Like October would have
Everybody,
been good.
yes, because everybody during that like winter season was like, what can I use? And I'm like, it's coming, I promise.
Yeah.
But I tell you, it's an amazing formula. Just once again, another product to keep you happy, your hair life happy, like all throughout the week.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this company called Tikwane.
mhm,
That it's this one woman, Anissa, who works behind the stage in movies in Hollywood. And so her clients are actors in wigs all day long. And she's
yes,
like, she created this scalp product because they all have scalp conditions
yes,
from being in wigs all
yes,
the time. Yeah. And it's great. It comes with like this little wooden comb too, kind of same idea. And I take it with me when I go to the sauna, just like it's a very therapeutic feeling.
it is.
Um,
It is. And that's like I don't always like talk about it to people. Like when I go to the salon to get my hair done, I'm always like so insecure. But like I wear ponytails are like puffs, kind of like how I
yeah.
I'm in San Francisco and like when I pull my hair up, I like the way my scalp like the skin like folds. Sometimes
Uh-huh.
it gets pushed together or wrinkled, like and it's nothing I'm like concerned about at all, but I know like when I've been doing that weeks, all throughout the month, I'm like I literally it's like if you wore a ponytail, for a long time and like
Yeah.
every day just doing that. I'm like I love the look, but I know that when I let my hair down I'm like, oh my goodness, like I need my scalp massage. And I need like a treatment without grabbing, like a harsh shampoo or anything like that. And so it's just very, like you said, therapeutic. It definitely like relieves all that stress and tension.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I'm like kneading my my scalp. I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
it,
Well, it's all those little muscles attached to our hairs
yeah,
that get sore like muscles on our body.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's an amazing feeling. Yeah, it makes me love my hair and like explaining that to clients. It's those little things that they're like, I deal with that all the time, but I just usually like I'm like, this is what comes with having curly hair. And I'm like, no, you can take care of that. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
No.
Awesome. All right. Well, I feel like I got everything and more
Yeah.
out of this interview. This was so fun. I was like allotting about an hour, and we almost said an hour and a half, girlfriend.
Oh, cool,
So
cool.
yeah. One more question. I heard that InnerSense is coming out with a hair color line this year.
Yeah,
Do you currently do color in the salon, or you cuts only?
I do. I do color, cuts and styling. Yeah.
Okay. Have you had the opportunity to tinker with any color yet?
I have not yet. Hopefully this summer I'll be at headquarters and I'll get to play around with it. But from all of my other peers who have and seeing their work, I'm very much jealous.
That's so
Um,
cool.
so I'm really excited. I know that they did a launch at the beginning of this year in Texas. I forgot at Maryville.
Mm.
And I was out of town and so I wasn't able to attend, but everybody was like, "Oh my goodness, Breanna." So hopefully this summer I'll get to.
Yeah, and then that'll open up a whole new area of education for them with color and textured hair too. So,
Exactly. And that's what I'm really excited about because I feel like that's something I'm like when it comes to teaching and the different classes and stuff, like that's always a conversation I want to get into. But having a company that would back you, the color line that I currently use, like I love them. They work for me, but there has been some like I've had reps that have come out to my salon and they're like, "Oh, honey, you need to speed that up. Like she has dark, coarse hair." And I'm like, that's gonna fry her curls and her elasticity will not be there. And like it irritates me sometimes because I'm like, okay, these are the reps from the company. Like
mm-hmm.
so I
Yeah.
just know that the development of this color line, one, the fact that it's, still within clean color, like is amazing. That's revolutionary already. And then
Mm-hmm.
two, like just having that passion behind it just means so much more to us as stylists. Because it is kind of like concerning to me. I'm like, yeah, I use it, but like they've asked, like, hey, can we use your work? Can we like do this? But can you teach this class for us, but teach it according to our curriculum? And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just would not do that on curly hair. You know what? And they're like, well, we're just trying to hurry up and do fast placement. And it's not about
Yeah. If that's not you, then it's not you.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Always new things. New
Yeah, I'm excited. I use like a clean color right now that I enjoy, but their education is not
Yeah,
great.
and that's why I'm like, you have a clean color line. So like that's why I like it, but like the education
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a feeling Inner Sense will be pretty spot on.
very excited. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much
thank
again.
you.
I
Yes.
knew this would be a good conversation. When I heard you talk on stage, I was like, I need to talk to this girl.
Thank you. And literally, whenever you need anything, let me know. I know I got caught up and I was busy for a second, but yeah, this
Oh,
was
no, that's good. Okay, so tell us, for anyone that's listening, you are hosting a class or a couple classes with, and I'm so sorry, I meant to write her name down. I forgot to write it down.
yes, we're gonna be at Raven Rose Salon, Raven.
Okay,
But the class is gonna be with me and JC Dobson,
okay,
um, in Austin, Texas, coming up. This will be May 1st. And then also May 31st will be for consumers. So I'm really excited about that. We're gonna do like consumer class for them, and that next day will be all professionals. Everybody gets like their own take home kits. Consumers will get like their tools, their combs, brushes, like the best things that will help them set them up for success for styling their hair at home. And then also they'll receive like their own product kit. And then
cool.
same thing for the professionals. They'll receive all the same material in addition to their mannequins and materials that they need, for class and stuff like that. So
Awesome.
I'm really excited. They can sign up on Curology.com. Information is all on there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, Breanna Bell _ or the study of curls, or search us up at Curology.com. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to link all of that in the show notes for this podcast as well. All right. Well, you better get back to work because you have a lot of things going on, my
Oh,
dear. But thank you
thank
for your
you.
time. I
Yes.
appreciate it. And I'll just, I guess, be in touch as things unfold with InnerSense. I'm sure I'll be at a class as soon as the color is launched. So
Yes. See you soon.
great. Okay. That sounds great. Have a good day. Thank
Bye.
you. Okay. Bye bye.
All right, friend. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Your Hair Mentor podcast. It has been my pleasure to be here as your host. Again, my name is Crystal Green. And until next time, my friend, as I always love to say, have a wonderful hair day, and I'll see you then. Okay, bye.